Imagine being killed by a flying cow. That is genuinely what happened to a man in India. It was April 2023 and Shivdayal Sharma was an 82-year-old pensioner. He was in Alwar, India, near to a train station. He needed the toilet, but there didn't seem to be any nearby. He decided to find a somewhat secluded spot in order to relieve himself. Little did he know a cow had wandered onto the train tracks. In a case of extremely unfortunate timing, a train happened to be hurtling down the tracks at that exact minute. Now, the trains there typically reach speeds of 100 miles an hour. Therefore, there was absolutely no chance that this cow would be able to jump out of the way in time. The cow was struck by the oncoming vehicle. The cow was actually launched 30 meters into the air because it was hit with such force. The cow flew through the air and right into the path of the urinating pensioner. The force that the cow hit him with was so intense that it killed him instantly. This is what the train looked like after the incident. Another pedestrian was also inches away from being hit by the cow too.
115 dead bodies were just found rotting inside of this funeral home in Colorado yesterday. This is an extremely disturbing news story. So this is the Return to Nature funeral home in Colorado Springs, Colorado. They specialize in green burials, which is kind of a new trendy thing, which amongst other things means that your body is not embalmed upon your death. So you're kind of left to rot and just go back into nature as you came into the world. But it seems like the owners of this funeral home took that process a step too far. So inside of this funeral home, where there's 2,500 square feet of space, they discovered 115 bodies. I mean, I can't imagine what the interior of that building looked and smelled like. And according to the police department that made this shocking discovery, most of those bodies were so badly decomposed that they can only identify them through DNA. Obviously, this means that these bodies have been stored there improperly for a very, very long time. In another interesting twist, the authorities actually stated that they don't know exactly what this funeral home was doing with these bodies. Some theories include they may have been selling body parts. Obviously, they may have just been telling people they were burying their loved ones and they weren't. Or there could be other gruesome, disturbing things that were happening here that I guess we'll find out about soon. Yeah, so since this happened yesterday, we don't know much about what exactly was going on here, but I'll be sure to update you guys once we find out more about what the hell was going on at this funeral home.
Has a neighbour's Ring doorbell footage solved an unsolved murder? Corey Shearer was a 20-year-old from Jackson, California. He was a brother to 3 sisters, and they were all extremely close. He was a talented football player in high school and was always up for a laugh. On the 5th of August 2022 at 11:21, police received news of a shooting. They were told this has taken place in Ramsgate Way. It was Corey's girlfriend who made the call, and she told police that her boyfriend had been shot. He was, at that time, lying on the floor. Now, a house party had been underway at the time of the shooting. An ambulance raced to the scene, but unfortunately, they could not save Corey. Investigators tried to speak to partygoers, interview them, and find out what happened. Unfortunately, though, people seemed really hesitant to come forward with information, and the case quickly went cold. That was until last year when a neighbour's CCTV video was released. It appeared to show a suspect fleeing the scene. He was seemingly jogging away down the side of the neighbour's house. Now, 19-year-old Amyas Kugler has been arrested. He'd actually already been arrested back in 2023 on robbery charges in an unrelated incident. Police were able to collect DNA, eyewitness accounts, along with the CCTV from the neighbour's house. This obviously connected him to the homicide. He's been formally charged with the murder of Corey.
Don't mind the pain on my hand. So anyhow, so she makes these sounds when you touch that button. However, it's supposed to be for when she sits. However,
the Trolls doll that you just saw ignited an internet firestorm. And for just cause. So essentially, this was a Trolls World Tour doll sold by Hasbro back in 2020. And as you saw in that video, when you touched the troll doll's private area, it giggled and let out an excited little yelp. Now, obviously, parents that saw this were really concerned and claimed that it promoted pedophilia and child abuse. And parents felt that it was wildly inappropriate that when you touched this troll doll's private area, it let out those excited sounds. A Change.org petition was actually started back when this whole thing was going wild on social media. and it garnered over 300,000 signatures. That should show you that this is an issue that a lot of parents actually cared about. Hasbro eventually issued an apology and stated that they were pulling these dolls from the shelves. But my question is, how did something like this actually make it out of the warehouse, out of development, onto shelves? Did not one person in that entire massive multinational corporation stop and think, this is kind of weird? I don't know. This story just leaves kind of a bad taste in my mouth. But I am glad that at the end of the day, this was exposed and these toys were pulled from the shelves.
The body of a missing Washington woman was just found at a cemetery in Mexico, and authorities say she was tortured. This is Reina Hernandez. She was 54 years old and lived in Renton, Washington when she disappeared on February 26th of this year. Her friends last spoke to her around 10 that morning, and Reina said that she was going to a home in South Renton to speak with her boyfriend of 30 years. When she didn't return home and failed to go in to open up her hair salon, her friends reported her missing on February 28th. During the investigation, police found evidence at the South Renton home where Reina was last seen that she was taken against her will and likely kidnapped, and her car was also missing. It seemed as if she disappeared into thin air, but on March 8th, Renton police came across a news article in Mexicali about an unidentified body that was found in a local cemetery near the Tijuana highway. After giving authorities in Mexico information about Reina, they were able to positively identify her as the woman found in the cemetery. Her body had signs of torture. Her hands and feet were bound, she had been shot in the head, and she was wrapped in a blanket. Her car was also located nearby. A 61-year-old Renton man was arrested on unrelated charges, but is currently a suspect in the case. The man's name hasn't been released publicly, but according to Reina's family, he was her partner. Authorities believe that this was a domestic violence incident, as clients of hers from the salon reportedly stated that Reina did experience domestic violence, and even had a black eye before going missing. Right now, police are trying to figure out when and where she was killed, because if she was killed in the US, they're seeking to extradite the suspect. Reina was described as hardworking, empathetic, and she had a lot of love in her heart. Her family has since created a GoFundMe to help bring her body back to the US and to cover other expenses, so I'll include that here.
After a suspicious house fire, 2 children completely vanished. Chloe Leverett and Christopher Gage Daniel were half-siblings. Chloe was 9 and Christopher Gage was 7. They lived with their grandparents in Unionville, Texas. It was the 23rd of September 2012, and both children were at home with their grandparents, Bubba and Molly. The 2 children were last seen in the home around 6:30 p.m. At 9:30, tragically, there was a house fire. The fire engulfed the property and the whole place burnt down. When officers arrived at the scene, the grandparents were both found deceased. Sadly, also the remains of the pet dog and bird were found. However, bizarrely, both children had seemingly vanished into thin air. Officers scoured the property and the surrounding areas, and there was no sign of either of them. Investigators then started looking into what might have caused the fire to begin with. There was really no indication of whether this was an accident or an intentional fire. Now, the family were found to have over 30 propane tanks in the basement. Investigators believed that these had been ruptured. However, there was no evidence of an explosion. The children's mum actually spoke out about what she believes happened to her children. She stated that she believes that they were kidnapped and that the fire was started as a decoy. Now, if someone had kidnapped the children, this would obviously explain why there were no remains of them anywhere. Children's bodies don't just disappear. I mean, they even found the remains of the pet bird. To add to this theory, an eyewitness reported seeing in a restaurant a little girl who looked like Chloe a year after the incident. She reported this to police, but they were unable to track her down. If the children are alive today, they would be 20 and 18.
Last month, Samuel Clemens, a University of Missouri student, went missing, and 20-year-old Emma Adams has just been charged with his murder. On January 10th, Samuel's mom contacted the MU Police Department concerned after not hearing from him, and she asked them to conduct a welfare check. When they arrived at his dorm on campus at around 5:30 p.m., he wasn't there. Authorities then pieced together a timeline of his last movements via security footage, his university swipe card, and Uber, which they had found he had taken the night before. That, along with Samuel's last cell phone ping, led them to a house in North Columbia on the 2400 block of Bentley Court. When authorities arrived, Emma Adams opened the door. According to her, she had just woken up, but she invited the MUPD in to search the home and the backyard. Authorities stated that the odor of burning flesh was immediate. After a search of the backyard, authorities found Samuel's, quote, charred, smoldering remains on a mattress in a fire pit. His broken cell phone was then found in a sink full of water in the kitchen. According to a probable cause statement, Emma initially denied knowing anything about Samuel, but she eventually confessed to killing him. She stated that Samuel was beating her, so she stabbed him with a knife in self-defense, but she made no mention of why she burned his body in the backyard before falling asleep. Authorities also found a bloody pocket knife in the kitchen of the home, backing up her statement. Emma was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, in which she has since pleaded not guilty. She's also facing additional charges such as armed criminal action, tampering with physical evidence, and abandonment of a corpse. She's being held at the Boone County Jail on a $1 million cash-only bond and will reappear in court on February 16th. Samuel was 21 years old and on the autism spectrum. He was also a sophomore at MU studying biological sciences.
The murder of 13-year-old Dylan Redwine. He grew up with his dad, Mark Redwine, and his mom, Elaine. Also a brother, his name is Corey. Dylan and Corey didn't really get along with the dad like that. Thought of him as a creep. On November 2012, Mark had booked a flight for Dylan to come over for Thanksgiving. And he didn't really want to, but he had to because it was a court mandate trip. CCTV footage of him like at the airport because his mom drops him off at the airport. His dad picks him up. They go to a Walmart, then they go to this McDonald's. The last ever conversation with him and his mom stopped around 9:30ish, but it was weird because he usually doesn't go to sleep till 11-12, and then the next day comes, the son was gone. The first suspect is the dad, but the dad constantly would deny, not really worried about finding him. You would expect somebody to be
stressed, crying, hysterical, bro.
Throughout those years, he wouldn't really show up to campaigns. He wouldn't do anything to, I guess, get the word out. They also appeared on Dr. Phil, and they told him like, yo, are you willing to take a polygraph test? Says yes, but then he ends up being like, oh no, like I feel sick, I don't want to do it no more. Even with all the evidence like pointing towards him, it was just never enough. Until 2017, when investigators finally give the green light to arrest him. But the reason why he killed Dylan, a year before Dylan and his brother Corey were on the trip with his father, and they had discovered some disturbing images on the dad's laptop. They see pictures of the dad with women's lingerie, a wig, and makeup. He has also a baby diaper in his hand. As the pictures progress, it shows him eating and licking the from the baby diaper. After that, Dylan didn't really see the father the same anymore. He kind of lost all respect for him after seeing. He was disgusted. And then before the trip, Dylan told Corey,
"You think you could sleep through someone in the same room as you being shot?" It was the 8th of December 2010 in Centerville, Texas. 65-year-old Gerald Wilhelm rang police. It would be one of the strangest calls they'd had all year. The man calmly stated to police that he'd just woken up from a nap to find that his wife, Janice, was next to him in a pool of blood. He stated that she'd been lying on the sofa in the exact same room as him when he woke to find her lying dead with a gunshot wound to her neck. He quickly told the operator that she was depressed, had been having medical issues, and she must have taken her own life. He'd apparently not actually woken up to the sound of the gunshot. Police attended the scene and very quickly determined that it was a self-unaliving. However, due to Janice's medical issues, she was actually incapable of holding a gun to her own neck. This was due to Janice actually having had a tumour surgically removed from her in the past. She was shot at such an angle that the bullet went into her lungs and severed her spinal cord. Now, Janice was actually known to be really scared of guns too. Nothing seemed to add up, and her children Wayne and Jennifer agreed. They felt that their mum just would not have done this. Now, Janice actually had a very valuable farmhouse which had a lot of oil on it. They figured out that there may be a financial motive for the killing. Then, in September 2022, Wayne, Janice's son, was also found dead. Some believed that it was a professional hit. Now, as far as I can see, the investigation into Wayne's death is still ongoing. As of yet, there's been no official connection made between Wayne's death and his mum Janice's death. Janice's death remains categorized as a self-unaliving.
31 decomposing bodies were found inside of this funeral home in Indiana. So welcome to the Langford Funeral Home and Family Center. This funeral home was located in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and for years people trusted them with the funeral process, the burial of their loved ones and pets. But in 2022, local authorities received a tip about the building. Neighbors were reporting a very foul smell emanating from the funeral home. And disturbingly, when officers entered the building, they discovered 31 bodies in varying states of decay strewn throughout the building. Obviously, a lot of these bodies were not being refrigerated. They were just being left out to rot. And in addition, they found the cremated remains of 16 people. That brings the total up to 47 individuals' remains found out in the open inside of this building. It was also reported that some of those bodies had been sitting in the building since March, and it was only investigated in July, which means I can't imagine what they looked like, what they smelled like. I mean, this is just so shocking. Eventually, Randy Langford, the mortician owner of the business, pled guilty to theft. These theft charges stemmed from his failure to actually finish out the funeral process and provide his clients with the services that they had paid for, like burial and cremation. But this story only gets more disturbing. So when authorities actually went through the building and checked on everything, they found that 3 of the building's 4 air conditioning units did not work. Which means that this guy, Randy, the one who ran the place, was sitting there with the smell of all of those bodies almost constantly while he was working. Another family actually filed a civil complaint against Randy too and said that he had sent them a box reportedly containing their daughter's remains. But when authorities searched through the complex, they actually found their daughter's rotting corpse amongst all of the bodies. I mean, I feel like this guy should definitely have gone to prison for a much longer time for what he did, but I guess that's the US justice system for you.
This woman vanished just before she was about to give birth. The circumstances are extremely suspicious. Amanda K. Jones was a 36-year-old mum from Hillsborough, Missouri. She worked as a bank administrator. At the time of her disappearance, she was actually 8.5 months pregnant with a baby boy. The alleged father to the unborn child was Brian Westfall. The pair had actually met at a party late in 2004. It was quite a short-lived romance and they actually stopped dating. Amanda got back in touch with him in February 2005 to inform him that she was pregnant. It was then the 14th of August 2005 that the pair met up. They met at the Hillsborough Civic Centre to have some food. Karen's friends and family said that she met him with the intention of finding out how involved he wanted to be in his child's life. She was also going to inquire about how he was going to financially support her. Now, she was last spotted at 5 p.m. in the car park that day and then seemingly vanished into thin air. Her car was later discovered abandoned in that car park. Her keys, phone and purse were all gone. Investigators examined her phone and found that the last conversation that she'd had on it was 11:15 p.m. that day. Now, her family and friends say it was really abnormal for her to just leave, especially being as pregnant as she was. It was actually really even a struggle for her to walk due to how heavily pregnant she was. There's been no activity on her credit cards since she vanished. Now, Brian maintains his innocence in relation to her disappearance. He told police that they parted ways about 4 to 5 p.m. that day and he last saw her sat in her car on the phone. However, we know that her last phone call on that phone was 1:15 p.m. that day. Police are also suspicious of his narrative due to the fact that her aircon in her car was not working. It didn't seem likely that she would be sat in her car chatting on the phone. Since Amanda's disappearance, her child from the previous relationship was placed in the custody of the dad. Tragically, the child's dad then died in 2007. The child was placed in the custody of her grandparents. In 2021, Amanda's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Brian. Frustratingly, he then died of natural causes a couple of months later. Amanda's case remains unsolved to this day.
This afternoon, P. Diddy's homes were raided by Homeland Security and other federal agencies. This is breaking news, let's look at it. So I've talked a lot about this recently, but P. Diddy is really the Jeffrey Epstein of music. And his crimes or alleged crimes are so terrible that I can't even talk about the details of them here on TikTok. Well, after these allegations came out about P. Diddy's sex trafficking, videotaping people performing acts without their consent, drugging party guests and minors, gang raping women, and so much more, he denied emphatically, oh, this is all just BS. But if it is BS, then why were his houses in Los Angeles, New York, and Miami raided today? By federal agents. So to put this into perspective, for federal agents to be raiding someone's home, you have to have committed a very, very bad crime. And a crime that's extremely expansive. And they sent out a lot of agents from different agencies at the same time, so they have to be looking for evidence of some pretty serious and dark crimes. Now, obviously, P. Diddy's not going to be able to deny this. I don't know if he's actually been arrested yet or not. I'm sure we're going to hear about that really soon. And yeah, I think that this may be our first official confirmation that P. Diddy may have been running a sex trafficking ring. And even though he's denied all of this, this is a really, really bad look. And I also think it's disturbing that the home that was raided was associated with P. Diddy's film company, Who knows what kind of sick, disgusting acts P. Diddy was having his henchmen or himself capture on video. And I'm just glad to see some initiative taken on this, because this is something people have been talking about for years. And I don't want to say that it's shocking, but I mean, the level of this and seeing this on the news is just wild. To have a fall from grace so large where you're on TV shows, you're in movies, you have a massively successful production company, music empire, and then you do so many terrible things that you have the feds raid all of your properties at the same time. Yeah, I'm going to keep you guys updated on what happens next, but I'm sure that the updates that we're about to receive in the next few days are going to be shocking, disturbing, and a lot of things are about to be revealed that P. Diddy, I'm sure, would much rather keep secret.
This is the tragic and sick case of Gabriel Fernandez, and this is a massive trigger warning. This is 8-year-old Gabriel Fernandez, who was born and raised in Palmdale, California. And he was abused and tortured over a period of months by his own mother and her boyfriend. Gabriel lived with his grandparents until 2012, when his mother, Pearl Fernandez, regained custody of him despite concerns for his well-being from the family. And throughout his 8-month stay in the household of his mother, Pearl, and her boyfriend, he was systematically tortured and abused. The abuse included regular physical beatings causing broken bones. He was also being forced to eat cat litter and feces, his own vomit, and spoiled or expired foods. He was being burned with cigarettes and heated spoons, being shot with BB guns in various areas of his body, including the face and his groin. They also pepper sprayed him, forced him to wear women's clothing, and had him sleep bounded and gagged in a small cupboard. His teeth were also knocked out with a baseball bat. And according to Gabriel's siblings, when Gabriel's mother and her boyfriend were abusing him, they would just laugh about it. Prosecutors said that Gabriel's mother and boyfriend were motivated to abuse him because they believed he was gay. On May 22, 2013, Pearl Fernandez called 911 reporting that her child Gabriel was not breathing. Gabriel was fatally beaten by his mother and her boyfriend after failing to clean up his toys. When first responders arrived, they found him on the ground naked with several injuries. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital where doctors declared him brain dead. He died 2 days later on May 24, 2013 at the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. He died at just the young age of 8 years old, and the official autopsy declared he died from blunt force trauma that coincided with neglect and malnutrition. Gabriel's mother was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and her boyfriend was sentenced to death. This is definitely one of the most sickening cases you would ever hear about or read about. I can't imagine the pain and trauma Gabriel Fernandez was going through while being tortured by his mother and her boyfriend. And this was just complete abuse. They were treating Gabriel like he wasn't even human. I wish the mother got the death penalty too, but life in prison is not good either. But rest in peace to Gabriel Fernandez, and this case is absolutely sickening.
If you ever start seeing this number, you might need to start praying. I'm going to try to explain this simply. This relates to the Bible, the book of Revelation. The author of the book actually sees an evil-looking creature rising from the earth in an apocalyptic vision. For years, scholars have debated exactly what that creature or thing is, but it's referred to as the beast. And the Bible's book of Revelation 13:18 reads, "Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man. And his number is 666. But people don't know if the beast is really the devil or if it's a demon, but it's obviously not a good sign if you start seeing 666. People also think that this number could have been somebody trying to send a coded message. And all of this ties into the plot of the new film, The First Omen, which is being released on April 5th. In the film, a woman begins to question her own faith when she uncovers a terrifying conspiracy to bring about the birth of evil incarnate in Rome. This movie's being released April 5th. I can't give away too many details about the plot, but I'm very excited for this to come out.
This is the murder of James Bulger, one of the most heartbreaking true crime cases ever. This is James Bulger, and he was a 2-year-old toddler living in Liverpool, England with his parents. And on February 12th, 1993, he was abducted from a shopping mall in Bootle, Merseyside. His father briefly let go of his hand while they were at the mall, and John Venables and Robert Thompson, who were both 10 years old at the time, approached James and lured him away. The abduction was caught on security cameras right here, and the footage showed the two boys leading James away. And after abducting James, John Venables and Robert Thompson took him on a harrowing journey through various locations in Liverpool, during which they subjected him to severe physical and emotional abuse. And you won't believe what these two 10-year-olds did to this 2-year-old boy. They took James to train tracks where they threw blue paint into his eyes, kicked him, stomped on him, threw bricks and stones at him. They placed batteries in his mouth and may have inserted them into his anus, although none were found there. They dropped a 22-pound fish plate on his head. They hit him in the head with a metal bar countless times, which caused 10 skull fractures. James Bulger suffered so many injuries, 42 in total, that none could be identified as the fatal blow. Thompson and Venables then laid James across the railroad tracks and weighted his head down with rubble, hoping that a train would hit him and his death would be ruled as an accident. After that, they left the scene, and James Bulger's body was then cut in half by the train. James's severed body was discovered by a group of children 2 days later, and the forensics testified that James Bulger died before he was struck by the train. John Venables and Robert Thompson were charged with the abduction, torture, and murder of James Bulger. The case received widespread media attention and was deeply emotional and a controversial trial. The boys were found guilty of the charges, and they were initially sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, which allowed them to be held in custody for as long as necessary. They were sent to separate secure juvenile facilities but were eventually released on lifelong parole as young adults. The James Bulger case remains one of the most distressing and tragic true crime stories. Every time I come across this case, it just never sits right with me. I can never understand how these two 10-year-old boys could just take a 2-year-old boy away from his parents and then proceed to brutally torture him and kill him. This case is just sickening, and let me know your thoughts on it.
It's one of the most mysterious / disturbing cases that a lot of people have seen. So 10 years ago, right? This Dr. Joseph Whiter, he was brutally beaten. The pictures are mad freaking disturbing, but they actually got leaked. These are the pictures.
What the fuck? Wait, so if this happened 10 years ago, why are you talking about this now?
The case resurfaced. It's being talked about again. It's under investigation again because the main suspect, who actually confessed, so he was actually classified as a murderer, he said that he did it, but now 10 years later he's saying that he was just a witness.
So he didn't do it.
He didn't even kill a doctor. That's what he claims. He's claiming that the reason why he confessed was because he was so in shock when he was shown the morgue pictures.
So he panicked and said that it was him?
Exactly, bro.
So if he didn't kill the doctor, who killed the doctor?
Well, if you guys do want to find out how this crime was solved, tune in to Sleeping Dogs on March 22nd in theaters, starring Russell Crowe,
Martin Kasokis, Karen Gillan, and many more. You don't want to miss this. This is one of the most entertaining, thrilling murder mystery movies of 2024.
Get your tickets. We'll see you at the show.
This murder case will put you off ever going on spring break. Brittany Drexel was born in Rochester, New York in 1991. In April 2009, she asked her mum if she could go to a beach in South Carolina with friends for spring break. Her mum said no, as she just had a bad feeling about it. The pair argued for days about this, and eventually Brittany asked if she could just go to a friend's house for a few days, and her mum agreed. Brittany actually went to South Carolina for the trip her mum had refused to let her go on. 3 days later, Brittany and the group that she was travelling with got to Bar Harbor Hotel in Myrtle Beach. Brittany called her mum to say that she was at the beach, but her mum assumed that she meant a local one. That night around 8, Brittany left her friends at the hotel to go and meet a good friend who was staying at another hotel. The walk was only around 1.5 miles. Security cameras at the Blue Water Resort showed her arriving. CCTV then captured her leaving around 45 minutes later. Brittany was texting her boyfriend, John. They'd been texting back and forth, but around 9:15 her text suddenly stopped. John called her friends to see if they had heard from her or knew where she was. No one answered, so he called her mum. Now, this was the first time her mum realised that she'd actually gone to South Carolina with her friends. She phoned police, and calls and texts to Brittany's phone went unanswered. Police began the hunt for Brittany. In her hotel room, only her purse and her phone were missing. No sign of her was found in the extensive search of the area. Frustratingly, the case would go cold for 7 years. That was until June 2016, when a prison inmate made a shocking confession. Taquan Brown claimed to have witnessed Brittany being SA'd by a gang on April 27, 2009. He claimed that he then heard her being killed by gunshots. However, police were still unable to find Brittany, and they were unable to corroborate the whole story. Police found that registered S offender Raymond Moody, 62, was staying at a motel in Georgetown in South Carolina around the same time that Brittany disappeared. On the day she vanished, Raymond was actually pulled over for a traffic violation near Myrtle Beach. A police officer had noted that he had scratches all over his face. Upon questioning, Raymond actually confessed to killing Brittany. He also provided the location of her remains. She had to be identified through DNA and dental records. It's believed that the young girl was strangled and buried by the morning of April the 26th. Raymond was sentenced to life in prison.
This story is honestly just tragic all around, and it just goes to show the lengths that people will go to afford the extortionate medical bills in the US. It also makes me really grateful for the National Health Service that we have here in the UK. It was March 2022, and mother of three, Kylene Waltman, was walking down a rural road in South Carolina when she was attacked out of nowhere by two pit bulls and a German Shepherd. It's an absolute miracle she didn't lose her life, but by the time emergency services got to her, she'd been scalped and her arms and legs had been completely shredded. They did manage to save Kylene's legs, but both of her arms had to be amputated at the shoulders. She suffered multiple infections and she had to undergo 10 surgeries in just 4 weeks. She'd also just become a grandmother and she was absolutely devastated at the fact that she wouldn't be able to hold her grandchild. Kylene's sister did set up a GoFundMe page to afford some of the medical bills, but it just wasn't enough. Kylene didn't have health insurance, and when she went to get fitted for 2 prosthetic arms, she was turned away. She was also denied financial assistance from Medicaid and disability for months. She was in constant pain, and she was also denied pain medication, including a cream that cost $500. She was also refused psychiatric help. Her mental health really began to suffer, and the debts began to grow and grow. 7 months after the attack, a car was pulled over in South Carolina for a traffic stop, and there were 2 passengers. One of them was Kylene Waltman, and both passengers admitted to having drugs on them. Kylene had turned to distributing drugs to try and pay off her medical bills. She was found to be in possession of 15.5 grams of methamphetamine, which is considered trafficking weight, and she was charged with intent to distribute. She was later released on a personal bond. It was found after this attack that those 3 dogs had been involved in a couple of attacks before, and they were clearly a danger to the public. Those 3 dogs were euthanized, and when police checked the owner's property, he was found to have 10 more dogs. They were all seized and sent to rescues. Kylene is now suing Abbeville County Animal Services as they knew that those dogs posed a threat to the public and they did nothing to stop the attack. I honestly really feel for this woman. Her life will literally never be the same again. She's gone from an independent single mother of 3 to needing help doing literally the most simple of tasks. I really do hope that she gets a payout because she deserves it.
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
This man makes human soup for a Mexican cartel, and this is a massive trigger warning. This is Santiago Mesa Lopez, and he turned the victims of the cartel into soup. Santiago was a skilled mason, so much so that he caught the eye of some members of the Tijuana cartel. They then hired him to do construction work for them and take care of their horses. Santiago proved to be a hard-working employee who never questioned his bosses or a task. So they decided to bring him on board the Tijuana cartel and show him the ropes. He rose through the ranks of the cartel from drug dealer to the rank of drug office keeper. It was a risky job, but years later, Santiago was still alive and had his job. But things became complicated when Santiago's cartel got into a war with another cartel. The streets of Tijuana became a battleground with thousands of people getting killed and their bodies getting abused daily. This then got the attention of the Mexican authorities and the DEA and the FBI. And the cartel soon realized they had to get rid of the bodies quickly and quietly. They then got the idea from dangerous people who make people disappear, and the idea was to turn them into soup. But they needed someone they can trust fully to do the dirty work, and that person was Santiago Mesa Lopez. They then brought him into a room for an experiment. In the room was a 200-liter drum filled with caustic concoction of water, soda, and other chemicals. They then brought in the dead body of a victim of the cartel war. Santiago was then ordered to strip the body and stuff it into the drum. He did this without asking any questions or blinking an eye. They then all watched as the body started to dissolve in the liquid, so they left it overnight. The next morning, they came back to see the body had completely dissolved, leaving behind smudge and bone fragments. Santiago then got a new title called the Stew Maker. This title fit him well as he was the one stirring the bodies in the drum, turning them into soup. As the Stew Maker, his task was simple but brutal: dissolve the victims of the cartel in acid. While the cartel was destroying and killing their enemies, Santiago was making soup with what was left of their bodies and erasing every bit of evidence from the cartel's crimes. Santiago operated in numerous locations, mostly near remote ranches or farms bordering the United States. He took deliveries of the bodies in different locations, and in some months, Santiago got 30 to 50 bodies to completely dissolve and disappear. He would chop up the bodies in smaller pieces and then dump them into the drum containing the acid solution. The process could take several hours depending on the size of the body. He would then stir the mixture occasionally with a wooden stick or metal rod. And the pieces that weren't dissolved properly, like teeth and some bone fragments, were then burned with gasoline. The liquid from the barrels was then poured into rivers or wells, but as Santiago became more skilled, he constructed drainage systems that made it easier for him and his crew to dispose of the remains without having to carry the heavy barrels of liquefied humans. Santiago was said to have dissolved over 1,000 bodies in his career, and for his service, he was making $600 weekly. This is absolutely crazy, and many people say he could have said no, but if he did, those might have been his last words he ever spoke. And would you rather be in the pot or stir it? Santiago definitely did what he did only to survive. But if you want a part 2 explaining the aftermath, just let me know and I'll make it.
This is how Snapchat helped to solve the murder of a teenager who was shot in Merseyside. On the 7th of April 2020 in Sefton, Merseyside, a distress call came into the police. It was the younger brother of 20-year-old Mikey Rainsford. He stated, "My brother's just been shot." He then explains that we don't even know if we're safe and can be heard shouting, "Mike, wake up." Mikey's brother Josh and his dad had been watching TV. Mikey returned home that night at about 11 p.m. Mikey then asked his dad for a lift to his girlfriend's house and his dad agreed. His dad watched and waited as Mikey packed a bag of snacks from the kitchen. Suddenly, the pair were startled by 2 loud bangs. These turned out to be gunshots through the window, and Mikey quickly fell backwards. It became apparent that Mikey had been shot. His dad started chest compressions while Josh rang 999. Soon, armed police entered the house, and Mikey was taken to hospital, but tragically was pronounced dead shortly after. Within hours, rumours were circulating on social media that Pip and Worm were responsible. These were nicknames of the Foy brothers, Michael and James. They were known to be involved in gangs and substances. Now, 53 minutes prior to Mikey's killing, a police officer was in the local area and noticed 2 people on a scrambler bike. Suspecting that this meant trouble, the officer called for backup, but she then noticed a house with a broken window. This was the house of the Foy brothers and their mum Joyce. It transpired that somebody had thrown bricks through the window, and one brick had narrowly missed Joyce's head. Police started to collect CCTV evidence of the bike that had been spotted in the area, and they found the bike on CCTV around the same area and time of Mikey's killing. Police then got a search warrant for the Foy's property and found nothing. Strangely, James, Michael and mother Joyce all apparently lost their phones the day after the murder. Despite this, police were able to use mobile phone data to pinpoint the brothers' movements on the night. A Snapchat video was uncovered featuring an electric bike similar to the ones that the brothers owned from an account linked to James. This was the Snapchat image with the following text. Minutes later, Mikey was killed. There was no evidence that the bricks through the window had anything to do with Mikey Rainsford. By all accounts, he never got involved in any gangs or trouble or substances. The Foy brothers' mum was charged with perverting the course of justice. She was accused of disposing of her SIM card and was jailed for 2.5 years. Michael Foy was found guilty of murder and got life in prison with a minimum of 30 years. James was found guilty of murder and possession of a firearm and got a minimum of 28 years. Their uncle Craig Johnson and a neighbour were found guilty of perverting the course of justice after getting involved in the aftermath.
This is one of Hollywood's worst pedophiles, and even after his conviction, he was still allowed to work around children. To give you a quick rundown, this is Brian Peck. He's been in a number of movies, including Return of the Living Dead, where he played the character Scuzz. This is a very famous 80s horror zombie movie. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I definitely have seen it, and I definitely recognize this guy. Well, apparently at one point in his life, Brian Peck decided to start giving people acting lessons from his own home. And yes, he gave acting lessons to young underage kids, specifically a lot of young underage boys. This brings us to 2004, when Brian Peck was convicted of a lewd act against a child and oral copulation with a child under the age of 16. Here's his actual sex offender registration. Apparently, according to the court documents, Brian had been coaching this young boy in acting at his home, in his residence. And that's where all of this went down. This all would have been swept under the rug, too, if the child's parents hadn't reported Brian Peck to the police and had him arrested. Now, what's interesting is that he was originally charged with 11 counts, but was only convicted of 2. I'm just going to read these to you guys. The documents show Peck was originally charged with lewd act upon a child, sodomy of a person under 16, attempted sodomy, sexual penetration by a foreign object, 4 counts of oral copulation of a person under 16, oral copulation by anesthesia or controlled substance, and sending harmful matter, and using a minor for sex acts. That's a lot of counts. Eventually, he was convicted. He then had to serve a very minuscule 16 months in jail, and he was let out. And guess where he went back to? Hollywood. And guess who took him back in with open arms? Hollywood. After his conviction and after he served his sentence, Brian Peck actually went to work on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. This is kind of insane. And he was allowed to work on this show because of some weird legal loophole. Basically, he was banned from working directly with children, having direct contact with children, but he wasn't prohibited from actually working on productions that involved children. This was obviously seen as really problematic when people around the internet began to figure out that Brian was actually a convicted sex offender with an offense against a child. And to my knowledge, he was eventually let go. I don't know what he works as currently. He worked on some other big-budget Hollywood shows in the last couple of years. And he still regularly appears at horror movie conventions and other horror-related events where he takes pictures with people, probably their families too, and signs autographs, which I think is just kind of really disturbing. And it should be noted that although the identity of the person that Brian abused has never been revealed publicly, it has been stated that they were a major star at Nickelodeon at the time. So I don't know who that would be, but it's just a sad story all around. And I cannot believe that they would still choose to work with this guy even after his convictions. I mean, it's insane. I also want to add in here that I actually made that video about a year ago. So I was talking about this stuff way back when. So if you want to keep up to date with things that are happening like this, if you want to help me raise awareness about these crimes and the people that are getting away with them, make sure you give me a follow and share out these videos when you can, because only together can we put a stop to this horrific shit that keeps happening here, not only in America, but across the world.
This girl was kept in a box and used as a sex slave for 7 years. 20-year-old Colleen Stan is an American woman who was kidnapped and held as a sex slave by Cameron and Janice Hooker in their California home for over 7 years between 1977 and 1984. Her case has received international fame and has been a subject of many books, films, and television series. On May 19, 1977, Colleen Stan was hitchhiking from her home in Eugene, Oregon, to a friend's home in Northern California where she was heading to a birthday party. Cameron Hooker kidnapped 20-year-old Colleen after picking her up. Colleen said she was a very experienced hitchhiker and had allowed 2 rides to go past her before accepting the ride with Cameron Hooker. Colleen said she felt confident climbing into the blue van because Hooker's wife Janice and their baby were in the car. They then stopped at a gas station along the way and Colleen went to use the restroom. And she said a voice told her to run out and jump out the window and never look back, but she never did, which she definitely regrets. When they left, they got on the highway and Cameron Hooker pulled over on the side of the road and put a knife to Colleen's throat, all the way until they got to an isolated area. She was then locked in a wooden box that was designed to prevent light, sound, and fresh air entering. After this, Colleen was tortured and kept locked in the box for 23 hours a day until she was given a contract and forced to sign herself into slavery for life in January 1978. Her kidnapper also said that they were being watched by a powerful organization called the Company, and if she ever tried to escape, they would torture her and harm her family. Colleen then became a slave and her new name was Kay, and she was forced to call Cameron Master. Cameron then started raping Colleen, and it was mostly consisting of oral rape. Cameron reportedly didn't want to have normal sex with Colleen because he considered that to breach his agreement with his wife. Instead, he raped her with objects. To avoid painful punishments, Colleen tried to comply with Cameron's commandments, which later led to her being allowed to go out to jog and work in the yard, and even help him with bigger stuff like an underground dungeon for more slaves. Even with an open door, neighbors, and a telephone, she never made an attempt to escape because her fear of the company kept her from seeking help. Additionally, Stan was also allowed to visit her family by herself in 1981, but did not reveal her situation due to her fear of the possible consequences from the company. Her family thought she was involved in some sort of cult, and they did not want to pressure her to stay in fear that she would stay away forever. The next day, Colleen returned for a second visit with Cameron posing as her boyfriend. Cameron feared that he had given his slave too much freedom and took her back to his home, where he locked her in the wooden box under his waterbed. She remained in the box 23 hours a day for the next 3 years. Colleen would go to the bathroom using a bed pen which she positioned under herself with her feet. Once Cameron's children had gone to bed, he would take Colleen out of the box and feed her and torture her. Colleen was not allowed to make any noise, and she had to stay still for 23 hours a day in the complete dark, with little to no air to breathe. In the summer, the box would get over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. In 1983, Colleen was allowed to get a job as a maid at a hotel, and Cameron wanted her to become his second wife, which was a turning point for Janice, who is his wife. And in August 1984, Janice began struggling with herself and went to Colleen. She then told her that Cameron was not part of the company and the company wasn't even real. Janice then helped Colleen escape to a bus station where they had Colleen's parents help bring her home. Colleen Stan is still alive today, and she experiences PTSD and has extreme back and shoulder injuries, which is from being trapped in a small box for 7 years straight. This case is extremely gut-turning, and could you ever imagine this happening to you? Luckily, Cameron Hooker was found guilty of kidnapping and sexual assault and was sentenced to 104 years in prison.
Sometimes true for stranger than fiction. The case of Richard Trenton Chase is a story which even the most depraved horror writer would struggle to create. Over the course of 4 weeks spanning across 1977 and 1978, Richard Chase took the lives of 6 innocent victims in Sacramento, California. His murders gradually progressed in violence, beginning with drive-by shootings and culminating in acts of cannibalism.
When women went round to their friend's house to see where she was, they received a friendly greeting from her killer. This case will send shivers down your spine. It was the 30th of January 1976 in Hermosa Beach, California. Karen Klass was a 32-year-old mother. She was actually the ex-wife of singer Bill Medley from the Righteous Brothers. They were famous for hits such as Unchained Melody. The pair got married back in 1964 and had a son together. However, they got divorced in 1970 and she remarried. Her husband's name was Gerald and they had a son together named Damien. On the morning in question, Karen had just dropped Damien off at nursery. She'd had plans that day to go and meet her friends for coffee, so they were concerned when she didn't turn up. They decided to go round to her house to investigate. When they arrived, they rang the doorbell but got no response. At that point, they wandered around the back of the house, and to their surprise, the sliding glass doors were actually unlocked. They pushed them open and shouted out for Karen, and all they heard was a strange muffled noise. Then, terrifyingly, a man appeared. He had long hair, a beard, and they did not recognise him at all. Chillingly, he stated, "Hello, ladies," before leaving the house. The women then discovered their friend lying naked on the floor. They obviously rang police immediately, and when police arrived, they discovered Karen was miraculously still alive. There was evidence of a struggle, and Karen had been AR'd. She was rushed to hospital but tragically passed away from her injuries about 4 days later after being in a coma. Now, due to Karen's link with her famous ex, the story gained widespread media attention. That coupled with the fact that a killer was on the loose. Police collected DNA evidence from the scene, but obviously back then technology was limited. Now, frustratingly, because Karen was actually alive when she was found, no photographs of the crime scene were taken. This obviously made the murder investigation very challenging. Now, Karen's friends gave police a description of the man and they came up with some police sketches. They begged the public for help, but it would be an agonising 2 decades later that a breakthrough came. Due to DNA technology advancing, they were able to test some bodily fluids that were found on a towel at the crime scene. The DNA was a match for Kenneth Troyer. What investigators discovered from his case file was absolutely stunning. He was a serial R-er and burglar. His brother had been living near to Karen prior to the murder. Now, Kenneth, it turns out, had actually been convicted of burglary and placed in prison. He actually escaped 6 years after he murdered Karen. After escaping from prison, he went on a huge crime spree. He robbed 19 houses, committed 3 armed robberies, and also went round SA-ing women. A couple of months after beginning the spree, police were able to track him down. In a dramatic turn of events, a high-speed car chase ensued. Kenneth then drove into a tree, got out the car, and was shot to death by police officers. Police finally knew who Karen's killer was and how he came to a grisly end.
This father killed his son with a baseball bat and just listened to the 911 call. On March 25th, 2021, Matthew Ponamarico, who is 34, called 911 from his home in Ohio to say that he had killed his 5-year-old son, Jax. He said that he killed his son with a baseball bat because he was hearing voices. Now, more than 2 years later, he pleaded guilty to the crime and was sentenced to life in prison. He will be eligible for parole after spending 45 years behind bars. Now, what I'm about to show you is the 911 call Matthew made just after he murdered his son with the baseball bat. And this is a massive trigger warning.
I just killed my son.
What do you mean you just killed your son?
I'm hearing voices.
Oh, okay. How old's your son?
6.
Where's your son now?
He's dead.
Dead where?
In the living room.
All right. Do you have any weapon?
Can you just send in cops?
Yeah, we're doing that now. What's your name?
Matt Pomerango.
I'm sorry, the first name?
Matt.
Matt? Spell your last name for me, Matt.
Ponomarenko.
What's your son's name?
Jack.
Jack?
Jax, Jax.
And you said you're hearing voices?
Yes.
All right, how did you kill your son?
With a baseball bat.
You killed him with a baseball bat?
Mm-hmm.
And why did you kill him with a baseball bat?
I don't know.
Was there anyone else there with you and him?
No.
Okay. All right, Matt, we've got some units on the way, okay? I want you to stay on the phone with me. And when did you do that? Matt? When did you kill your son? Matt?
Yeah.
When did this happen?
I'm shaking.
I understand. When did this happen? Matt? When did this happen? Okay, Matt, do you have any other weapons in the home?
No.
And when did this happen? Okay. And when did this happen, Matt? Matt, you still there with me?
This is the UK's most famous missing boy. In September 2007, Andrew Gosden was just 14 years old. He was a very intelligent boy and was top of his class in most classes at school. He was an introvert that usually spent most of his time at home. The day before Andrew went missing seemed completely normal. He went to school, he had some tea, and then he watched some TV. However, on September the 14th, he seemed more irritable than normal. Instead of getting the bus to school that morning like his parents thought he was, he went to a cash point and withdrew £200. CCTV then captures him walking home, where he changed his clothes into a Slipknot t-shirt. When he left the house, he didn't take his charger with him, and he also didn't take £100 that he'd saved up. He didn't take his passport, but he did take his house key, which indicates he was going to come home. He bought a one-way ticket to London and was last seen leaving King's Cross station at about 11:30. Frustratingly, the school had actually tried to contact Andrew's parents to say that he hadn't turned up to school that day, but they dialed the wrong number and left an answer phone message on the wrong phone. His family was completely cleared of any suspicion, and the family and the school and all of the students went to London and they were handing out loads of flyers. Weirdly, a year after this incident, a man came to a police station to say that he had information about Andrew. Now, the police station was unmanned, so the person spoke to this man just over an intercom system and sent a police officer down there. Mysteriously, by the time the police officer arrived, the person had vanished. This is what Andrew might look like now, just being the age that he may be if he's still alive. Theories about this case is that he may have gone to London to meet up with someone or go to a concert. Was he lured there by somebody with bad intentions, or was he just going there for the day, gonna come back, and was at the wrong place at the wrong time and somebody did something bad to him? In 2009, the family paid for a search of the River Thames to try and find some sort of closure. The search did find a body, but it wasn't Andrew's. The most up-to-date information that we have on this case is that 2 men were arrested on suspicion of kidnapping Andrew, but they've actually been released.
This is one of the worst true crime cases in history. This is the case of Sylvia Likens, who was a 16-year-old girl who, along with her younger sister Jenny, was left in the care of Jeroud Benesweski by her parents. Jeroud was a single mother with several children of her own. She agreed to take care of the Likens sisters in exchange for a small amount of money every week. The Liken parents were carnival workers and believed their daughters would be safe with Jeroud. But that was far from the truth. Things took a horrific turn when Jeroud and her children began to subject Sylvia to prolonged physical and emotional abuse. She was physically beaten, starved, and subjected to various forms of torture. Jeroud's children and some neighborhood kids also participated in the abuse. Sylvia was kept locked in the basement where she endured unimaginable suffering. Jeroud and the children not only beat Sylvia, but they also forced her to write degrading statements all over her own body, including phrases like, "I'm a prostitute and I'm proud of it." Sylvia was also burned with cigarettes, had her head shaved, and was often deprived of food and water. This abuse continued for months. On one occasion, as the family ate supper, Jeroud, Paula, and a neighborhood boy named Randy force-fed Sylvia a hot dog overloaded with condiments, including mustard, ketchup, and spices. Sylvia vomited as a result and was later forced to eat her own vomit. On another occasion, Paula, who was Jeroud's daughter, beat Sylvia in the face with such force that she broke her own wrist. Later, Paula used the cast on her wrist to further beat Sylvia. Jeroud would also occasionally force Jenny, who was her younger sister, to strike her and beat her. And if she did not comply, they would just beat her. Several of Jeroud's children's classmates frequently visited the house to both physically and verbally torment Sylvia. And with Jeroud's active encouragement, these neighborhood children and her own routinely beat Sylvia, sometimes even using her as a practice dummy in violent judo sessions, also lacerating her body and burning her with lit cigarettes over 100 times. They also severely injured her genitals. To entertain Jeroud and her teenage accomplices, Sylvia was forced at one point to strip naked in the family living room and masturbate with a glass Pepsi Cola bottle in their presence. And this was all for the enjoyment of this woman right here. And due to the increase in the frequency and the brutality of the torture and mistreatment of Sylvia, she gradually became incontinent, which is the uncontrolled leakage of urine. She was then denied any access to the bathroom, being forced to wet herself. And as a form of punishment, Jeroud threw Sylvia into the basement and tied her up. Here, Sylvia was kept naked, rarely fed, and frequently deprived of water. Occasionally, she was tied to the railing of the basement stairs with her feet barely touching the ground. On October 25th, Sylvia attempted to escape from the basement after overhearing a conversation, after overhearing Jeroud say they were just going to leave her to die in the basement. Sylvia attempted to flee to the front door, however, due to her extensive injuries and general weakness, Jeroud caught her before she could escape the property. And on the morning of October 26, 1965, Sylvia Likens tragically succumbed to her injuries and died in the basement. Her cause of death was a combination of severe malnutrition, physical trauma, and the overall abuse she endured. Her body was found with numerous injuries, including broken bones and extensive scarring, and the autopsy showed that there was more than 150 wounds across her body. Jeroud was found guilty of first-degree murder and she was sentenced to life in prison. But somehow she was released in 1985 on parole, which is just sickening. She deserves to be underneath the prison. This is just absolutely horrifying. The Sylvia Likens case is a heartbreaking and disturbing true crime story that continues to captivate and horrify people to this day. There's a lot more I could talk about in this case, so if you want a part 2, let me know. Rest in peace to Sylvia Likens, and I can't believe this case.
This is the disturbing case of the child who killed a child. In July 2018, 6-year-old Alicia McPhail was abducted from her bed. She'd been staying with her grandparents in the Isle of Bute. She'd gone to sleep watching Peppa Pig, and no one had any idea of the horrors that would unfold that evening. Meanwhile, 16-year-old Aaron Campbell was drinking with friends at his house. Aaron apparently became upset in the night because he had been arguing with his mum. He had had a challenging upbringing involving physical and emotional abuse. Aaron decided that evening he wanted to get some substances to smoke from a couple that he knew. The couple in question were Alicia's dad, Robert, and his girlfriend. They'd been known to sell substances to Aaron previously, but he could not get hold of them. Intending to go and steal them off them, Aaron armed himself with a knife. He headed to Robert's house where he lived with his parents and girlfriend. This was obviously where Alicia was staying that evening. When he arrived at the house, he noticed the 6-year-old sleeping in her bed and took the opportunity to snatch the poor defenseless young child. Disgustingly, he carried her to a secluded location, SA'd her, and then killed her. He then disposed of his clothes in the sea. At 6 a.m. the next day, Alicia's grandparents woke up to discover that the little girl was missing. They straight away alerted police and locals. When the family asked Aaron to keep an eye out for the little girl, he texted them back saying, "Oh damn, I'm sure she's not went too far." A local man soon discovered Alicia's lifeless body around 15 minutes away from her house. Along with a lot of the local community, Aaron's mum actually checked her CCTV of her house. She was hoping that this would help with the investigation, and it definitely did. She saw her son leaving and returning from the house that night, and she handed the evidence over to police. Aaron was arrested, and it was discovered that the clothes that he'd abandoned on the beach did actually match with his DNA.